I now give the floor to the representative of Lebanon.
Thank you, Madam President. Allow me first to commend Mrs. Amos, Mr. Guterres, and Mr. Shimonovitz for their relentless efforts to help alleviate the suffering of the Syrian people and to ensure the respect of their basic rights. I would also like to thank them for their briefings, which only confirm how appalling the humanitarian situation has become and how urgent remains the need for this Council to act. It's indeed tragic that since the beginning of the Syrian conflict, over 100,000 people died and many more were wounded. Almost 4 million were displaced in Syria and another 2 million fled, seeking refuge in neighboring countries, including my own Lebanon. But it's even more tragic that the Security Council, the organ entrusted by the United Nations Charter with the maintenance of peace and security, has so far failed to put an end to this conflict, while every day brings before our eyes more victims and greater destruction. Madam President, time and again, we and others have warned against the potential spillovers of the Syrian conflict into neighboring countries. Failing to put an end to this conflict, potential dangers are unfortunately now turning into actual realities. Increasing cross-border fire and incursions from Syria into Lebanon are threatening the security and stability of my country. We strongly condemn all such acts, whoever their perpetrator and whatever their alleged reason might be. And we appreciate that the presidential statement issued by this Council on July 10, and I quote, echoes President Sleiman's protest in his letter of June 18, 2013, at such repeated shelling from the conflicting parties, including by the Syrian Arab Armed Forces and Syrian armed opposition groups that violate Lebanon's sovereignty and territorial integrity, end of quote. In this context, let me reiterate that my government remains fully committed to its policy of disassociation from the Syrian conflict and to the terms of the Ba'abda Declaration of June 12, 2012. Madam President, another dramatic impact of the Syrian conflict is the massive influx into Lebanon of refugees fleeing violence in Syria. According to UNHCR, the latest figure in this respect is 607,908 refugees, compared to 129,106 at the end of 2012 and to 28,477 in mid-July 2012. In other words, the number of refugees has increased by over 460% since the beginning of this year, and by over 20-fold in 1 year's time. In reality, the numbers are still much bigger. As a matter of fact, the Lebanese General Security Directorate puts the number of Syrians in Lebanon at 1.2 million. The discrepancy between the two figures is due to the fact that many Syrians did not feel the need to register as refugees, or were unwilling and or afraid to do so for political or sectarian reasons, not to mention illegal entrance and the 200 to 300,000 Syrian workers traditionally present in Lebanon and their family members who joined them as the situation was worsening within Syria. In addition, there are about 40,000 Lebanese returnees and 63,000 Palestinian refugees who fled Syria since the beginning of the crisis. Madam President, Syrian refugees are now found in more than 1,400 locations in Lebanon, and their numbers have come to exceed those of local inhabitants in 30% of these locations. It's also noteworthy that around 77% of these refugees are women and children, and that 66% of them are in North Lebanon and the Bekaa, which are the closest region to the Syrian border and which also happen to be the poorest regions in my country. Madam President, amid continued violence in Syria, by the end of 2013, the number of refugees and other persons displaced to Lebanon is projected to reach 1,229,000. This is the equivalent of over 1/4 of Lebanon's own population, putting significant pressure on local communities. Madam President, it's as if your country, the United States of America, were going to have an influx of 75 million refugees. Yes, Madam President, 75 million, or over twice the population of Canada. Could you imagine the impacts of an influx of such magnitude on your own country? In its spring 2013 Lebanon Economic Monitor, the World Bank noted that the Syrian conflict, and I quote, is severely and negatively impacting the Lebanese economy. The largest impacts arises through the insecurity and uncertainty spillovers and touches at the heart of Lebanon's societal fabric, end of quote. In fact, consumer confidence reached a new low in 2012, plunging by 36.8% compared to 2011. And as security incidents have continued to increase in 2013, a further decrease in consumer confidence is expected to take place, leading to a slowdown in economic activities. Faced with uncertainty, private investment has also declined. Inflationary pressures are mounting. Trade activities have been largely affected by the Syrian crisis, as traditional land transit routes through Syria have been severely disrupted, if not altogether closed. And insurance and freight costs have significantly risen. For example, from January to April this year, cumulative exports through Syria dropped by 20%. The tourism sector witnessed double-digit declines during 2011 and 2012. And UNESCO estimates an even larger decline in 2013 to around 25%. Since tourism represents 10 to 12% of GDP, the impact of such decline in Lebanon could lead to a 2.5 decline in GDP resulting from tourism alone. The Syrian refugee crisis has indeed broader implications on stability in Lebanon and has put significant pressure on local resources, leading to increased security threats, crime rates, social tensions, and labor competition, since around 1.4 million Lebanese citizens are thought to be affected by displacements from Syria. Beyond the fiscal cost, the influx of refugees has also strained public services, such as in health and education. Madam President, these pressures and threats on Lebanon are obviously mounting, and the escalating needs of the Syrian refugees have clearly outstripped my country's capacity. Yet, well aware of its humanitarian responsibilities and legal obligations, and in view of the historical and brotherly ties between the Lebanese and Syrian people, Lebanon reiterates before you today that it shall not close its borders to those fleeing the horrors of violence and destruction. It shall not extradite refugees who sought safety on its territory. It shall not stop delivering basic humanitarian assistance to any refugee within available means. However, Lebanon also believes that it is its right to ask all members of the international community to share with it the burdens of the Syrian refugee crisis, whether in terms of numbers or assistance, especially that Lebanon is the smallest among hosting countries, while having the highest number of refugees, both in absolute terms and relative to their own population. Clearly, Lebanon cannot cope by itself with the immense tasks which lie ahead as the number of refugees are spiraling. For a comprehensive and coordinated response to the current crisis, 1.7 billion US dollars is required to fund Lebanon's part of the 5th Syria Regional Response Plan, which covers the period from 1 January to 31 December 2013. Here, direct support to the government of Lebanon for the strengthening of its national capacities and essential public services is of crucial importance. No less vital is to secure direct funds to meet the needs of Lebanese host communities in assisting refugees. The Kuwait conference was a successful start, and pledges have been generous. But we all need to ensure that pledges do not remain pledges, and that all donors make good on them. Madam President, undoubtedly, an increase in the humanitarian assistance to the people of Syria is a matter of paramount urgency. Let me conclude, however, by quoting from Secretary General Ban Ki-moon's appeal to the people of Syria, issued on the occasion of the beginning of this holy month of Ramadan. And I quote, "No matter how effective our humanitarian response, it will not end the violence. The solution to the problems of Syria does lie there. What is needed is a peaceful Syrian-led political solution for a democratic future in which all Syrians live in security, equality, and dignity." End of quote. I sincerely hope that this Council will live up to its responsibilities in helping to make such a solution possible. Thank you, Madam.
I thank the representative of Lebanon for his statement. I now